Live. Waiting for the live stream. I'm going to start recording on my end. There we go. So now we're recording. I'm waiting for the live stream to load, folks, and so it's going to load any minute. We're not announcing right now the live streams because we've been hacked a little bit too much, but welcome everyone to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. This is our weekly political theater with the one and only, the most dangerous mind in America, my friend, the Fetz. How are you, Jim?
Louisa, this may be the most catastrophic week for a political party in the United States and U.S. history. Absolutely stunning stuff between the fiasco in Iowa, much more to be said about that, a soaring State of the Union and his vindication at the vote on impeachment. It's been Trump all the way. You might as well have a steamroller over the Democratic Party.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Jim. A steamroller. Look, I have a really funny clip I want to share with our viewers. I think that you'll appreciate it. This is kind of what sums up the Democrats since Jim mentioned that. Sorry, that was a little bit loud. But first, I just want to say it's Saturday, February 8th, 2020, and I didn't put the date on there, but I just want to give you an idea of what the Democrats are actually up to. Ready?
Yeah,
so I think
you have a crew to pilot the plane.
I think you get the idea. Absolutely.
Honest to God, Louisa, that really sums it up. It's unbelievable. This has been the greatest disaster. Unreal.
Absolutely. More political theater, folks. We're going to get right to it. But before we do that, I wanted to first inform everybody of a scam. If you live in the New Jersey, New York, tri-state area, Connecticut tri-state area, please beware. There's international scammers who are looking to scam you and hack your computer, your bank accounts, purchase eBay gift cards through buy.com. They're onto it. Buy.com knows their fraud department is looking out for this. They're calling what they're doing is they're cloning Apple's phone number. So it makes it sound like it does look like Apple calling. And Apple's calling to warn you that your Apple ID has been breached and you need to re-sign in. You need to, then they start taking you to like your financial pages. It's like, I don't need you to do that. That has nothing to do with Apple ID. Then they're in your computer and they've hacked you and it's too late. And so beware, folks. Apple said they will never call you unless you ask for a phone call. They will never call you, folks. So don't fall for this scam. Please beware. Pass this around. Talk to your parents if they're, home alone or whatever. Don't fall for this scam, because I'm so mad at them because they hacked my computer and I got it all repaired. But when I was at Apple, they said, we're never going to call you. So just beware for that, folks. So Jim, I'm ready for your reports and your stories, my friend.
Oh, fabulous, Louisa. There are even more developments now than I will be reporting here that we'll mention in passing. Let's begin with the State of the Union, which was really quite masterful. There were those who said they thought it was not only a terrific speech, but even the greatest State of the Union they'd ever heard. Before declaring the state of our union is stronger than ever before, Trump appeared to snub Democrat House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, turning away as she reached out to shake hands after he handed her a copy of his remarks. One of Trump's most reality show inspired moments underscored the challenge he faces with African American voters. In the middle of his address, Trump gave the nation's high civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, to Rush Limbaugh, conservative talk show host many American Africans view with suspicion because of his past comments on race, including disparaging remarks about former President Barack Obama. Let me say, I've been very impressed with Rush Limbaugh on the occasions I've listened to him. The guy's a completely brilliant commentator. He virtually pioneered over a 30-year period the political commentary shows. In my judgment, he's very deserving of this award. And of course, since this is coming from the New York Times, they're failing to report that the latest Rasmussen poll of black likely voters showed 34% were supporting Trump, not only because the economy is doing unbelievably well, black and Latino unemployment is down, but because he's closing up the borders, which of course have been a conduit for immigrants taking up the lowest paying jobs and thereby threatening the security, the gains in quality of life achieved by many blacks and Latinos in this country. So I'm not so sure Trump has such a black problem. Not only that, but he recognized the oldest living Tuskegee Airman, who is over 100 years old. I mean, it was a very touching moment. Limbaugh, here we have further from the Times, an emotional Limbaugh who this week announced he's been diagnosed with advanced lung cancer, stage 4, Louisa. He has only a short period to live. Stood and rubbed his eyes as First Lady Melania Trump fixed the medal around his neck. Republicans stood and cheered. Democrats stayed seated. This was typical of their gross impropriety. And of course, we have more about it when Nancy Pelosi tore up the speech with great fanfare. She was preparing to do so. During the speech, you can see she'd made these little tears in the copy she'd received. Now, here's a commentary from Jonathan Turley. He's a professor of law at Georgetown. And what's striking about this is that Turley is left-wing. He was one of the lawyers called by the Democrats for the impeachment hearing, and he laid out his case. But listen to what he has to say about Nancy Pelosi. George Washington law professor Jonathan Turley wrote Wednesday that House Speaker Pelosi should resign after slighting President Trump while introducing him at the State of the Union and for ripping up his prepared remarks. First, this is published in The Hill, which is a highly reliable, respected publication for those who work on Capitol Hill. First, Pelosi dropped the traditional greeting before the start of the address. Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States. Instead, she simply announced, members of Congress, the President of the United States. It was extremely petty and profoundly inappropriate, putting aside the fact that this is not her tradition, but that of the House. It's no excuse to note that the president was impeached. Pelosi has demolished decades of tradition with his poorly considered moment, of course. Many will celebrate her conduct and be thrilled by the insult to Trump. However, even those of us who disagree with his policy should consider what Pelosi destroyed in her moment of rage. She shredded the pretense of governing with civility and dignity in the House. Notably, she did not wait to rip up her copy of the speech until after she left the House floor. Pelosi wanted to do it in front of the cameras at the end of the address with the president still in the chamber. That act was more important to Pelosi than preserving the tradition of her office. In doing so, she forfeited the right to occupy that office. If Pelosi cannot maintain the dignity and neutrality of her office at the State of the Union, she should resign as the Speaker of the House of Representatives, with which I 100% agree. We also had, of course, the vote, highly expected to exonerate Trump. The only question was whether any Republicans would vote in support of the articles and whether any of 3 Democrats might vote against them. One Republican did indeed vote against, but none of the Democrats came along, which is going to place them in serious jeopardy because they are red states that Trump carried handily. On the article of abuse of power, remember, we have a 53 to 47 Republican majority, so there was never any expectation from the beginning that this was going to succeed in removing the president from office. Right. The final vote, 48 to 52, then obstruction of Congress, straight party line, 47 to 53. Senators voted largely along party lines to acquit President Trump on charges he abused power and obstructed Congress when he sought to pressure Ukraine to investigate his rivals. 2/3 of the Senate would have been required to convict and remove him from office, something that's never happened. Here are some of the key players whose doubts were at least open to question. Susan Collins, whom, in my opinion, gave one of the most masterful, important speeches in the history of the Senate in relation to the Kavanaugh hearings, where she came out in support after a very thorough dissection, just an exemplar of a keen intellect at work to support him. The moderate Maine Republican is up for re-election this fall. Signaled early on she was breaking with the GOP by being open to hearing for witnesses for which she voted, but not to convict. Joe Manchin of West Virginia was one of a few Democrats who could have sided with Republicans and voted for Trump's acquittal, but he did not. Mitt Romney was a renegade member of the Republican Party who split with Trump and his party when he voted to convict. Now, that might sound like that was an act of courage as the left is seeking to portray it, but in fact, Romney is deeply involved in corruption in Ukraine. He was voting out of self-interest to protect, conceal his own involvement there, which is going to rapidly emerge, already is emerging. Meanwhile, Common Dreams, which of course is a left-wing venue, sought to portray what occurred here in the following fashion. Senate Republicans acquit Trump in cowardly and disgraceful final act to their show trial. Make no mistake about it, this was nothing more than an attempted partisan cover-up for the shameless and illegal conduct of Donald Trump. I mean, this is just a manifest absurdity by way of reporting. It certainly shows that there is no objective journalism in the country today. Everyone has become an advocate. This whole business was partisan from the beginning, even though Pelosi herself had originally declared there can be no impeachment unless it's bipartisan. She nevertheless promoted a completely bipartisan effort in the House. Why would she have been surprised if the Senate did not go along with a political stunt? In what critics called the final act of a ham-handed cover-up by Republican lawmakers, President Trump was acquitted by the Senate Wednesday on both impeachment counts, approved by the U.S. House last month. In the first vote on abuse of power, the vote was 48 for conviction and removal, with one Republican, Mitt Romney, joining the 47 members of the Democratic Congress caucus. All other 52 voted to acquit. Here's a sign of what I'm talking about, why this guy ought not to be regarded as a knight in shining armor aboard a white steed. Flashback, top Romney advisor served on Burisma's board with Hunter Biden. A top Mitt Romney advisor in 2011, Joseph Coffer Black, joined Burisma's board of directors while Hunter Biden was serving on Burisma's board. Louisa, this is embarrassingly bad. Would you like to comment on these stories?
Yeah, I'd like to screen share a comment regarding the tearing up of the SOTU speech, as you referenced. This is from the president. So this is a very quick clip that I want to share.
Well, I thought it was a terrible thing when she ripped up the speech. First of all, it's an official document. You're not allowed. It's illegal what she did. She broke the law. But I haven't been asked a question other than a lot of people that viewed it. They couldn't believe that she did it. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was very disrespectful to the chamber, to the country. And, you know, look, I got very high marks on the speech, and I didn't know she did it until I was walking out, and some of the congressmen and women were saying, can you believe what she did? But I didn't know she did it. Well,
I'm going to stop that because it's a little hard to hear that particular clip. But you know, he said it's illegal, Jim. It's an official document.
Yeah, it is technically illegal. I doubt anything would come of that. It was a political stunt. But the fact is, it was a disgrace to the traditions of the,
Absolutely.
Of the House, and totally bipartisan. And I agree with Jonathan Turley. She really ought to properly resign.
Yeah. And you should floss, Nancy, before your public appearances, because it looks like you're either, you know, chewing on something you didn't finish chewing in your mouth, or
they're dentures.
They're dentures. Fix it and forget it, Nancy. Fix it.
Yeah.
Fix it and forget it. Okay. Well, they make that glue for that. Okay, so it's, you know, we gotta. But you know, honestly, I was watching her too. Everybody was watching Nancy during the during their the SOTU, and there were times when she really needed to be. Showing poor sportsmanship that the country is doing well is completely
Oh, I
unacceptable.
know, I know. And when the Democrats refuse to stand time after time for
Yes.
good news about the state of the nation, that was
Yeah.
highly inappropriate
Yeah.
and reveals how detached they have come from reality. They're so fixated
Yeah.
on getting this man out of office when he's actually succeeding in benefiting the country. I found that really problematic,
Well,
really
Jim, this was an attempted.
disgraceful. Disgraceful is the right word for
It's
it.
it's it's not only disgraceful, it's a criminal, it's an illegal attempted coup against a sitting duly elected president. And
Oh,
these
yeah.
people, for committing fraud to the American people, they have absolutely defrauded us using our taxpayer money for their political agenda. They are going to have to be held accountable. And there's going to
Well,
be
they're
there's
going
going
to
to be a push for this,
they're
Jim. You'll
being
see
held
this.
accountable. For example, the Wisconsin State Journal had two major stories on the front page. One about the Democrat debate of last night,
Mhm.
where all the candidates actually were very good. It was a spirited debate. I enjoyed watching it. But in addition, how Sondland and VIndman and his brother have been marched out of the White House completely appropriately for having
Yeah.
taken their stand against the president. He has the right to do it, and I
Mhm.
support it. I
Mhm.
think it was an appropriate act. Though the Democrats, of course, are going to cry out when they didn't have a case to begin with. I mean, this whole thing was fabricated, and it would have been obvious the president was going to clean up his stable when it was said and done.
You're absolutely right, Jim. And I'm going to screen share that report regarding Vindman. Wait a second. Why isn't that? Okay, here we go. This is from Breitbart. Alexander Vindman admits making up parts of the Trump call summary. So, did he lie under oath? Is this what we're dealing with here? So he admitted he made up elements of President Donald Trump's call with Ukrainian President Zelensky in an official summary. Prior to the call, Vidman included a discussion about corruption in the talking points provided to the president, but Trump did not use them in the call. Oh, so maybe he was trying to set him up. How do you like that? So the summary Vidman wrote after the call read: President Trump underscored the unwavering support of the United States for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders, and expressed his commitment to work together with President-elect Zelensky and the Ukrainian people to implement reforms that strengthen democracy, increase prosperity, and root out corruption. Okay, the root out corruption is highlighted here. So, but Vindman clarified during his testimony that the president did not bring up the topic rooting out corruption during the phone call, but he included it in his summary of the call anyway.
But that reflects his understanding that that's what Trump was after. You know, this investigation was perfectly appropriate. It was within the framework of a treaty between the United States and Ukraine for mutual
Yeah.
cooperation in investigating criminal
Yep.
conduct. And what Trump did in inviting
Yeah.
the president to pursue it was totally within bounds, particularly when Burisma has been the center of a history of corruption in Ukraine.
Well, I mean, look, I'm familiar with the press poolers, and you have to make corrections when if you're doing a transcript, it has to be verbatim. You can't you can't paraphrase. It has to be verbatim. So he should have made that correction. Whatever. I'm just telling you what Breitbart's reporting. I'm also going to show what the DC Patriot has to say about this because, of course, he was canned today. Vidman's twin was canned today. So here we have breaking. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman fired, escorted from the White House. Brother tossed out as well. The lieutenant colonel, who many believe leaking information to the whistleblower, has been fired by the president. His brother was also told to pack his bags too. Vindman was fired on Friday and escorted out of the White House per multiple sources close to people at the DC Patriot. Vindman was on the National Security Council and was top advisor to the Ukraine. Unfortunately for him, the president, as do many Americans, believe he was the leaker in the White House. So you can come and you can take a look at this this is from the DC Patriot. You can look at more stories about this, but that's what happened, folks. And so, he's not the only one who was fired today. Let's see. There was a few other people that I have reported today that were fired on our blog here. Who else was fired today? Who else do we have? Traitors. Yeah, we don't need any more traitors in the White House, that's for sure. So the president has made a statement about this. Fake news at CNN and MSDNC keep talking about Lieutenant Colonel VIndman as though I should think only how wonderful he was. Actually, I don't know him, never spoke to him or met him. I don't believe. But he was very insubordinate, reported contents of my perfect calls incorrectly. And let's see, what is the rest of his, and was given a horrendous report by his superior, the man he reported to, who publicly stated that VIndman had problems with judgment, adhering to the chain of command, and leaking information. In other words, out. Okay, so that was, who else was fired? Let's see. Well, I can't. Oh, okay. Yes, Sondland. So that's EU ambassador Gordon Sondland fired, Trump cleaning house, as you just reported, Jim. So yeah, and of course, the Canadian scientist at the center of the Chinese bioespionage probe has been found dead in Africa. So that's according to Zero Hedge. So I'll tell you, folks, everyone's jumping out of that airplane, trying to drain the swamp. Jim, you can move on to your next story.
Here's a nice report about the State of the Union. In essence, the president told Americans he agreed with Democrats that we need a big, energetic government, but not their kind of big, energetic government. This is by Hunter Baker. I think it's a very nice piece to share. Donald Trump's State of the Union address was far more than the usual laundry list of policy proposals and heartwarming moments with heroes from the balcony, although both were much in evidence. With this address, he honed and perfected his pitch for another term and for the future of American politics. The 2020 State of the Union was the fullest expression of Donald Trump's governing philosophy we have seen to date. In essence, the president told Americans that he agrees with the Democrats that we need a big, energetic government, but not their kind of big, energetic government. With Trump, you're getting economic nationalism, patriotism, an emphasis on American accomplishment rather than failure, celebration of American civil religion rather than a renunciation of it, and a bold, ambitious outreach to African Americans. In essence, he's saying, we can talk about history or we can make history going forward. Which do you prefer? He clearly believes, with some evidence, he's opening a new period in African American prosperity through his protection of the American working class. This last part is critical. You can either turn your magnifying glass on 1619 with the New York Times and the Democrat Party as you try to deconstruct America and all its promise, or you can use 1776 as a base from which to build. Notably, Trump spent little time bemoaning problems of over-incarceration and a malfunctioning criminal system with adverse racial impact. Instead, he became the president who actually achieved the first major steps to reform. Trump clearly believes the answer to Americans' tragedies in the past is a bright future explicitly for Americans, including African Americans. His version of that future involves American citizens working to produce American goods rather than legions of disenfranchised persons living on a universal basic income with a highly developed knowledge of why capitalism is racist, predatory, and destroying the environment. The vision is more fundamentally positive, despite the occasional belligerence of the messenger, than it is critical. At the same time, Trump is throwing away the Republican libertarian emphasis on small government, which has typically been more honored through lip service than through concrete policy. He's offering more benefits, more protection, and more cooperation between the public and private sector. He wants big, active government, but not run by the secular liberals. Rather, he is proposing big, active government the way regular folks, as he sees it, want it. This government will offer family leave to parents and intervene in a healthcare marketplace that is operated in arcane ways Americans find difficult to understand and navigate. There's a sense here in which Trump's vision, try not to choke on this, is similar to that set forth by Franklin Delano Roosevelt with his 4 freedoms and his New Deal. The idea then is that as a good and blessed country, America can provide for the safety and well-being of its citizens. It doesn't have to be steeped in critical theory to do it. There was a time when a great many religious Americans bought into energetic government. They may do so again if they don't see that government as an enemy seeking to rout them from the field. A couple of big questions remain. At the moment, the prospect of building out a new direction in American politics may be brightest. One wonders whether Trump will be able to tolerate political prosperity. Any other candidate with his economic record would be sailing to re-election. He has put off many Americans, especially women, so badly with his rhetoric and aggressiveness that he isn't the lock to win that others would be. On MSNBC this morning, in the midst of their propaganda barrage where they were seeking to promote Amy Klobuchar, they were saying that, in fact, anyone else with the economic success of Trump would have a popularity rating of 63 to 65% and sailing toward re-election. So even the Democrats seem to understand that Trump's really doing a lot of good things. Just as he's beginning to crest the wave after impeachment, a successful SOTUS in Iowa's disarray, one can't help but wonder whether he'll be able to maintain a more statesman-like pose. Not addressing impeachment in the SOTUS was a start. We'll see if it lasts. The other big question has to do with whether Republicans will sustain movement in the same direction after a possible Trump second term. It may take a sui generis figure to bring about a sui generis politics. Senator Josh Hawley looks like a potential successor. Senator Marco Rubio may be making some of that noise as well. The Reagan-esque rugged individualism ideal will likely contend with Trumpian American solidarity for leadership in a post-Trump political landscape on the Republican side. As I say, I think this very thoughtful from Hunter Baker, JD, PhD, who's University Fellow for Religious Liberty and Associate Professor of Political Science at Union University and the author of 3 books on religion and politics. Louisa, meanwhile, Trump endorsed a bill allowing victims of illegal immigrant crimes to sue sanctuary cities. This is completely brilliant. President Trump centered the immigration portion of his State of the Union speech on sanctuary cities, calling for Congress to pass a Senate bill that would allow victims of crimes committed by illegal immigrants to sue the local or state government if it is a sanctuary. The United States of America should be a sanctuary for law-abiding Americans, not criminal aliens, Trump said in his speech. He called for the Justice for Victims of Sanctuary Cities Act by Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina to be passed immediately. The president highlighted the story of Jody Jones, whose brother Rocky Jones was killed in December 2018 by a man who had been deported twice, but he illegally re-entered the country. Rocky was at a gas station when this vile criminal fired 8 bullets at him from close range, murdering him in cold blood. Rocky left behind a devoted family, including his brothers, who loved him more than anything. The president called out California and New York, the former sanctuary state, and the latter a state that includes sanctuary zones where local police prohibit law enforcement from turning over criminals to federal immigration officers for deportation. As a candidate and president, Trump has called for an end to this type of non-cooperation between local and federal law enforcement. He blamed Rocky Jones' death on outrageous policies in California, with which I agree 100%. Trump also thanked Immigration and Customs Enforcement, whose enforcement and removal operation officers across the country make arrests of illegal immigrants who've been released from local jails and sanctuary zones and elsewhere. Your thoughts, Louisa?
I don't have any comments at this moment, Jim. So
Okay.
get right ahead. Move on to your next story.
Completely brilliant on Trump's part. I mean, this shows the guy knows what he's doing. Not only that, but Tucker Carlson has reported on a New Way Forward Act moving through Congress, where the left is not just downplaying MS-13 and other vile gangs that are entering the country illegally, but a bill that is the same length as the Constitution that would remake the Constitution and give illegal immigrants more rights and privileges than American citizens. Louise, it's completely disgraceful. Tucker's doing a great job of calling these things out, for which I admire him. Meanwhile, young people are set to make history with Bernie, and New Hampshire's youth movement is showing how there's a lot going on here, talking about in the past how the supporters of Eugene McCarthy made a big difference. In that case, it was opposition to the war in Vietnam. 5 decades later, what's propelling Bernie and his supporters is a grim reality of class war in America. I think it goes beyond that, really. It's these awful wars in the Middle East, where Bernie has a certain edge here. I've said more than once, Louisa, that because Bernie and Trump's foreign policy, when they were campaigning in 2016, overlapped. They both wanted to end the wars in the Middle East, get our troops out, stop squandering trillions of American taxpayer dollars on a pointless exercise. And yet, I believe Bernie's domestic program was at that point in time more attractive to most Americans than Trump's, for what was known thereof. I believe had the Democratic Party not sabotaged his campaign and allowed him to be their nominee, he might very well have been elected president. It turned out that the reason Hillary won the popular vote is that, as Robert Epstein, who's the editor-in-chief of Psychology Today, has now reported to Congress, Google manipulated its algorithms and brought as many as 2.6 to 10.4 million voters to Hillary in 2016. Google also appears to have been responsible for the Democrats regaining the House of Representatives in 2018. You know, what Epstein has been warning is that at less than the cost of a dime, the mere touch of a finger, Google can send get out the vote reminders to only Democrats. It can swamp the election in 2020. We're not worried about Russian hacking or intervention, which was a fabrication of Hillary Clinton and her allies. We have the problem, of course, with the Zionist infiltration by our media, but the greatest threat to democracy comes not from Russia, but from Google. It's completely outrageous. Meanwhile, Sanders' campaign internal caucus numbers show them leading in Iowa with Biden a distant fourth. Even Chuck Todd of the left-leaning Meet the Press said that for Biden to finish fourth in Iowa, which is how it turned out, was catastrophic. Sanders reports it received 29.7% of the vote, closely followed by former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg at 24.6%. Elizabeth Warren came in at 21.2%, former Vice President Joe Biden fourth at 12.4%. These were based on their tabulation from 40% of the precincts when the Iowa report was unavailable. This was very appropriate to report. It turned out the app they were using was calamitous. It turns out to have been designed by a company called Shadow Inc. that is staffed by former Hillary and Barack Obama zealots, and it appears to have been deliberately designed to deny Bernie Sanders the claim to have won Iowa in time to make a difference in New Hampshire. As Huffington Post first reported, the app was built by Shadow, a tech company owned by Acronym, a Democratic digital nonprofit that was launched in the wake of the 2016 election, pitching itself as a progressive answer to Republican dominance of the digital field. The company put out a statement early Tuesday saying it didn't provide technology to the state or national party or to any campaigns, but only invested in Shadow, despite a proud boast from Acronym's founder from last year. Here's the way with 99% of the precincts reporting, it seems to have played out. Pete Buttigieg, 13 delegates, Bernie, 12, percentage 26.2 to 26.1. The count of the state delegates, 564 to 562. Warren, well behind. It shows Biden with delegates, but you know Biden may actually have zero delegates when it's all said and done. Meanwhile, Bernie declared victory because he got 6,000 more votes in the first wave. There were three aspects to this. There was what they called the first alignment, which was everyone casting their vote when they showed up, which is like it would have been had it been a primary. Then there was a second alignment of reallocating support after they eliminated those candidates who didn't receive 15%. And then there was a final, very bizarre way which they allocated the delegates, all of which is extremely suspect. What I want to do today, 3 days late, is to thank the people of Iowa for the very strong victory they gave us at the Iowa Monday night, Sanders said, even though the vote tabulations have been extremely slow, we're now at a point with some 97% of the precincts reporting where our campaign is winning the popular initial vote by some 6,000. Now, that's perfectly appropriate. I think that's exactly right. The latest batch of caucus results released by the Iowa Democratic Party Thursday showed Sanders ahead of Butigeig in the first alignment by 46,672 to 36,718, a lead of 5,954, rounded off to 6,000 as Bernie has done. In the final alignment popular vote, that's after the second resorting. As Common Dreams reported, Sanders is still leading Butigeig by more than 2,500 votes, 44,753 to 42,235. Let me mention the turnout for the Democratic caucuses was only about 170,000. That is down, and that is a very bad sign for the Democrats. Amid frustration over Iowa, however, Sanders posts huge fundraising numbers. This is very, very significant. Bernie Sanders' campaign announced Thursday it raised $25 million in January from nearly 650,000 people, a third of whom were new donors. That makes it his best fundraising month of the 2020 campaign, according to his team. And I'll tell you, it's only going to get better. Sanders' aides also said he's using the small dollar cash infusion to place a 5.5 million TV and digital ad buy in 9 Super Tuesday states in South Carolina. Sanders' aides, the Vermont senator's show of fundraising force comes days before the first in the nation primary. And as the results in Iowa are being counted, with 97% precincts, the caucuses are too close to call. That remains the case today, Louisa. The Associated Press is unable to sort out what happened in Iowa, which is an indication of how badly they mangled it, and it has to have been deliberate. Indeed, one of the techniques that was being used was to resolve delegates by making a coin toss. And here you have a guy who actually was flipping the coin, but doing it in a devious manner, so he knew the outcome. Breaking ties by coin flip is nothing new, but the video below has caused some consternation. It shows Buttigieg winning the last delegate in an Iowa caucus precinct via coin flip that doesn't really look like it was done properly. The person flipping the coin appears to catch it awkwardly, take a peek, then flip the coin over before immediately declaring heads to give Buttigieg the delegate. Ian Miles Chong tweeted the video with a comment, how to rig a coin toss. Embarrassingly bad, Louisa.
Well, my comment is I'm going to screen share something here, Jim. This is what I have to say. Well, as a result of the Project Veritas expose on the Bernie campaign, make gulags great again. So that's my commentary for the Iowa caucus.
Well, it actually gets worse because Mayor Pete is turning into Mayor Cheat. I mean, what a nice way to put it. Hashtag Mayor Cheat trends after Buttigieg campaign is tied to company behind Iowa caucus app failure. The hashtag Mayor Cheat trended Tuesday on Twitter after reports former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg's campaign paid tens of thousands of dollars to the company that developed the app that was supposed to streamline reporting of Iowa caucus results, but instead failed, throwing the results into question. Here's another report about it. Dems released only 62% of Iowa caucus results, just enough to have Mayor Cheat in the lead. A lot of people are very pissed off by this. This was obviously dirty, and frankly, it discredits this guy. Now, he's highly intelligent, young, very articulate, presents good arguments, but if he's going to be a cheater, that may make him, qualify him as a Democratic politician for a certainty, but it's going to disillusion a lot of the public, especially independents and swing voters. Meanwhile, women of color bolt Warren's Nevada campaign in frustration. This is doing a lot of damage to Elizabeth Warren. A half a dozen women of color have departed Elizabeth Warren's Nevada campaign in the run-up to the state's caucuses with complaints of a toxic work environment in which minorities felt tokenized and senior leadership was at loggerheads. The 6 staffers have left a roughly 70-person Nevada team since November. during a critical stretch of the race. 3 of them said they felt marginalized by the campaign, a situation they said didn't change or worsened after they took their concerns to their superiors or to human resources staff. During the time I was employed with Nevada for Warren, there was definitely something wrong with the culture, said Megan Lewis, a field organizer who joined the campaign in May, departed in December. I filed a complaint with HR, or the follow-up I received left me feeling as though I needed to make myself smaller or change who I was to fit into the office culture. Another recently departed staffer, also a field organizer, granted anonymity because she feared reprisal, echoed that sentiment. I felt like a problem, like I was there to literally bring color into the space, but not the knowledge and voice that comes with it, she said in an interview. She added, we all were routinely silenced and not given a meaningful chance on the campaign. Complaints, comments, advice, grievances were met with an earnest shake of the head and progressive buzzwords, but not much else. I think that's typical of Elizabeth Warren herself, by the way. A third former field organizer was also granted anonymity, said these descriptions match her own experience. How could Warren be expected to run the country if she can't run her own campaign any better than this on the eve of primaries that are vital to her political survival? The other 3 women who recently left the campaign did not respond to requests for comments. One of the departed staffers declined to be interviewed because she feared professional consequences in an arena where it's already difficult for women of color to advance. According to another ex-Warren employee who spoke with her about the situation, the turmoil in Warren's Nevada operation comes ahead of the state's Feb 22 caucuses. Nevada is important not only because of its early spot in the nominating calendar, but because it's the first chance for candidates to prove their appeal extends beyond white voters who dominate the Democratic electorates in Iowa and New Hampshire. Now, Louisa, Elizabeth Warren has said that she's very concerned about this, but frankly, I find this inexcusable.
Jim, I have to tell you that I'm looking through the chats here. I'm a go fishy, McDan. I'm looking at our live chatters, and I just wanted to stop for just a moment and say hello to everybody in our live chat. Thanks for joining us. Jim, everybody says hello. You can say something to our viewers if you want,
Oh,
because
sure, I'm
we're
delighted
live.
to have you here. That's great.
Yeah, and they wanted to know something about the Forward Act, and I did talk about this in the POTUS report yesterday. So I don't have any comments on what you're saying because I don't think the Democrats have a chance in hell to win any, presidential election. I'm sorry. So I just don't have any comments on it. But I mean, other than I agree with your reporting on it, I just I don't know what else to say about them. I showed a clip before that shows them all, shows these pilots jumping out of airplanes. So it kind of sums it up for me.
Yeah, well, the Forward Act really is a revision to the Constitution were it to be passed and creates a kind of primacy for illegal aliens in the country over American citizens. So I think it's a complete astonishing effort. Remember, the Democrats want to win elections in the future because they believe these immigrants are going to vote Democratic. And they may be well right in that calculation, but it isn't in the best interest of the country, even if they judge it to be in the best interest of the party, which betrays their failure to put allegiance to America first over their political ambition. It's embarrassing. It's like Nancy Pelosi ripping up the State of the Union speech in public. She's trying to promote the interests of the party, but they weren't in the interest of the nation or even of the House of Representatives, which he thereby disgraced.
Thank you for that, Jim, because we had viewers who wanted specifically a little discussion about that. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to screen share for you the press release that the press secretary did put out regarding this. Regarding what's happening in California. This was published on the 6th. Today, a single unelected district judge in the Central District of California issued a legally groundless and sweeping injunction that, if not immediately lifted, will guarantee the release of innumerable criminal illegal aliens into our communities, putting citizens at dire risk. This ruling undermines the pillars of immigration enforcement and blocks traditional and vital law enforcement cooperation that has occurred for decades. This injunction puts the health and lives of innocent Americans in direct jeopardy. Our neighborhoods are less safe today as a result of this dangerous district court ruling. So let's just deconstruct this, okay? This is the Democrats' agenda. They want to release these criminal illegal aliens into our communities. They want to take our guns away so they can come in. This makes no sense. They want to come.
Stop sharing, Louisa. Let me comment too on this, because
okay, go ahead.
You're making an excellent point. We have two very diverse movements here. We have the citizens of Virginia who have sanctuary Second Amendment counties in order to stand up for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. On the other hand, you have sanctuary cities in California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, that are undermining the Constitution and the rule of law. So they're completely opposite in their emphasis. One is clearly right-headed, the other clearly wrong. And what's going on here is really tragic. There are so many horror stories now. There are rape gangs that have come in from Mexico, for example. I was given a story about 3 young girls who were raped and murdered by a gang. And, you know, it's brutal. And the fact that the Democrats are, you know, wanting to have the government pay to re-import illegal aliens who've been deported because of the commission of crimes, which is part of this new act, is just appalling, I mean, it's reaching the point where I'm willing to say the Democrats aren't just suffering from mass illusion, but that their disconnect from reality is so profound that they're actually mentally damaged. These are signs of mental illness that may be viewed as effects of Trump derangement syndrome. They're so unhappy with Trump and in the false belief that Hillary should have won and that he's a terrible person. They're unwilling to acknowledge that he's doing a lot of good for the country, that even I am very critical of aspects of his foreign policy, but that where they have completely lost their way. I mean, the impeachment was a perfect illustration. There was no bona fide basis for the impeachment. It was totally partisan. Even the founding fathers had worried that this sort of an impeachment could take place, because who knows now what will be the future. In the past, there's always been an understanding that unless there were broad bipartisan support for an impeachment, it ought not to go forward. That was Nancy Pelosi's initial stance, but she was converted to the other side, the radical, zealous left, and it's brought nothing but calamity to the country, a waste of time, money, and effort.
I agree. I hope, you know, if any of the viewers have comments about that, you know, the clip I was just screen sharing had something and I just removed it. The president was talking about severe Trump derangement syndrome, just as you're talking about. Let me just screen share really quickly what Jim is talking about with regard to this New Way Forward Act would protect illegal aliens and criminals. You know, folks, they're not even Americans. They're not even citizens. And
they're not taxpayers, Louisa.
Exactly. I mean, this is what I'm saying. It's like, Jim, they must know that there's much more. Barack Obama probably, you know, I had received video footage of immigrants coming off of FedEx cargo planes being bussed into the United States. Nobody knew these immigrants were coming in. Nobody had any idea who they were, where they were from. They bypassed as far as we know, they bypassed all customs and immigration. We have no idea what it was. I can't confirm that they were illegals, but how can they be so confident, Jim, to think that there's that many that would tip the scale in their favor in any way over the American people who have been here, who are citizens, who are taxpayers, who built America and who are rebuilding America? It's unfathomable. You're right. It is some form of mental illness. And you know what? Since you all know that my degree's in psychology, here's my DSM-5 book, and I think they need to add Trump derangement syndrome in here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's in here somewhere on under another diagnosis, inability to control yourself, you know, OCD disorder, things like that. But let's look at what this says. Okay, this says, under this legislation, the criminals are the victims. Law enforcement is illegitimate, and the only solution is to get rid of both. I mean, I'm not kidding when I said make gulags great again. This is what they were talking about in the expose by Project Veritas. Like the Constitution, this legislation is designed to create a whole new country. The bill would entirely remake our immigration system and with the explicit purpose of ensuring that criminals are able to move here and settle here permanently with impunity. Now, look, America, you got to wake up and you got to look. It's called HR 5383. I'm going to show you what it is. You probably are watching my screen share. And if you see this, pull this up, okay? The new way forward. This is what you have to do. This is sponsored by Representative Garcia Jesus. These are and they're co-sponsored. There's 43 co-sponsors. Check it out. They're all Democrats, okay? I don't see one Republican on this list. They're all the 43 co-sponsors are Democrats, and this is their agenda. This is the bill. What you need to do is call your representative. If you disagree with this, and I'm not telling you what to do, but if you disagree with this, call them. You can call them and tell them to kill the bill, okay? HR 5383. Kill the bill. And that's what we have to do. We have to stop electing people into office, folks, who are not going to be accountable to the American people. We have to do it because it's we the people, by the people, for the people. So we have to do it ourselves, Jim.
Well, thank God Tucker's on top of this and reporting about it. In my opinion, he's the only objective reporter we have on national television anywhere. It's the one show I recommend you watch. It's on Fox at 7 Central, 8 Eastern, and then it is rebroadcast at 11 Central and midnight Eastern. This is a very sober guy. He has a good intellect. He's not always right, but he's very balanced in his reporting, and he sees problems that are real problems that others aren't reporting about or only interpreting in a highly partisan fashion. So this is very serious stuff, everybody. And I think Louisa is completely right. They need a new addition to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychological Association to include Trump derangement syndrome.
I agree.
Now here's a wonderful essay by a fellow named Bill Thomas. The Dems' terrible, no good, very bad week. Listen to this. There's a children's book called Alexander and the Terrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, written by Judith Vorst. It's a simple story about a kid named Alexander and his worst day ever. Alexander's day, though, is nothing compared to the week the Democrats have had so far. The week began with the Iowa caucuses. There wasn't supposed to be much action on the GOP side. However, Brad Parscale, Trump's campaign manager, noted President Trump posted a record performance in the well-run GOP Iowa caucuses with record turnout for an incumbent coming from the Hill. The news for the Democrats wasn't so good. First, as I'm writing this, more than 24 hours after the end of the Democrats' caucus, the results still aren't in. Simply put, the Democrats botched the caucus count. That's not a conservative viewpoint. That's a view of many on the left. Chris Matthews, liberal MSNBC host, said, the guy in the White House is chuckling all night here, showing the Democrats that can't even get a 3-car funeral organized or whatever you want to call it, coming from the Washington Examiner. Michael Bloomberg, presidential campaign manager, Kevin Sheehy, called the Iowa caucus a disaster for the party. That's from MSNBC. That was just the beginning of the terrible week. Allegedly moderate former Vice President Joe Biden is not doing well in the results posted thus far. Biden has flopped to what looks like a 4th place finish from Business Insider. Not a good start for the much heralded electable front runner. Biden's campaign isn't taking this news sitting down. Former Vice President Joe Biden's campaign is demanding answers from the Iowa Democratic Party over technology quality control issues that have delayed caucus results from Axios. Suspicions have arisen among some, especially in the Sanders campaign, that something isn't quite right in what Iowa is doing, from NewYorkMag.com. Iowa was a disaster for the Democrats. That was Monday. On Tuesday, President Trump delivered the State of the Union address. Molly Hemingway of the Federalist, she's very good, tweeted what seemed to be the consensus, not just Trump's best speech, but the best State of the Union address I've ever heard from Twitter. Tuesday was not a good day for the Democrats. Wednesday will continue the Democrats' awful week. It's expected that around 4 p.m., the Senate will vote to acquit President Trump in the impeachment trial. Senator Susan Collins, who voted to hear more witnesses, announced her intention to vote for acquittal from ABC News. The dream of the Democrats and the media since before Trump was inaugurated will be squashed, at least for the moment, by Wednesday's vote. Impeachment and removal will fail. All the money spent on baseless investigations, all the time wasted in hearing built on the foundation of laws, that will all be for nothing. America, Democrats have wasted your time, your money, and your vote. A terrible, no good, very bad week for the Democrats is a great week for the regular people in America. May the Democrat infighting, hate, and incompetence continue. May the Trump administration continue to make America great. The more bad weeks the Democrats have, the better it is for us. Meanwhile, Trump's job approval at a personal best of 49%. Approval among Republicans hits 94%. Poll shows highest party polarization on record. Half of registered voters say Trump deserves to be reelected. Washington, President Donald Trump's job approval rating rose to 49%, his highest in Gallup polling since he took office in 2017. And the Gallup poll is well known to be favorable to the Democrats. The new poll finds 50% of Americans disapproving Trump, leaving just 1% expressing no opinion. The average percentage not having an opinion on Trump has been 5% throughout his presidency. Trump's approval rating has risen because of higher ratings among both Republicans and independents. That's the key, independents. His 94% approval rate among Republicans is up 6 percentage points from January, 3 points higher than his previous best among his fellow partisans. The 42% approval rating among independents is up 5 points, ties 3 other polls as his best among that group. Democrat approval is 7%, down slightly from 10. The 87-point gap between Republican and Democrat approval in the current poll is the largest Gallup has measured in any poll to date, surpassing the prior record held by Trump and Barack Obama by 1 point. The January 16 to 29 poll was conducted in the midst of the Senate impeachment trial that will likely result in the president's acquittal. The poll found 52% in favor of acquittal and 46% in favor of convicting and removing from office. Democrats identified Joe Biden, 44%, as a candidate they think has the best chance of beating Trump, followed by Bernie at 19, Michael Bloomberg at 10. Meanwhile, Democrats are most likely to name Sanders, 28, as a candidate who's closest to them on the issues, followed by Biden, 20%, and Warren, 16. Now, that's significant that they're most likely to say Bernie is a candidate who's closest to them on the issues. Implications. Whether the rise in Trump's approval rating and the Republican Party's image is being driven by a backlash against impeachment, the strong economy, or other factors may become clearer in the near future. If it is mostly impeachment-based, his approval rate may revert quickly back to the pre-impeachment impeachment levels as it did for Bill Clinton. Within 2 months of his acquittal in February 1999, Clinton's approval rating returned to where it was before he was impeached, as did the Democratic Party's advantage in party identification and leaning. If Trump's higher approval rating is being driven by Americans giving him credit for improvements in the economy, his support may increase over the course of the year, as it did for Ronald Reagan in 1984, Clinton in 96, and Barack Obama in 2012. All of those recent presidents held office during periods of sustained economic improvement and were reelected with job approval ratings of better than 50%. Here, I think, is a political cartoon that sums it up. Nancy Pelosi intended to hang Donald Trump, but pulled the lever. She herself dropped through the floor because of the acquittal. A stunning development. Louisa, I want to further observe that Trump's poll ratings typically fall 5% short of his actual support. So if that showed him at 49%, it's probable the actual support is 54 or even better, and there's every reason to expect it's going to continue to rise.
I agree, Jim. And just because we did talk about it, I'm in the DSM-5 book right now. And I just really quick, folks, it's not a joke, okay? Oppositional defiant disorder. Let me just read the diagnostic criteria. It's very quickly.
Good.
We have,
Good.
it's characterized by a couple of things, okay? Often loses temper. Check. We're talking, does this fit the Trump derangement syndrome? I think it's comorbid with delusional. I think it's comorbid with delusional disorder, which we'll get to. But if you think it fits, let me know. One, often loses temper, is often touchy or easily annoyed, is often angry and resentful. God, argumentative, defiant behavior. We have often argues with authority figures or for children or adolescents with adults. Often actively defies or refuses to comply with requests from authority or figures. I mean, that sounds like Adam Schiff there too. Often deliberately annoys others, often blames others for his or her mistakes or behavior and misbehavior, and also vindictiveness, has been spiteful or vindictive at least twice with the past 6 months. The disturbance in behaviors associated with distress in individuals or others in his or her immediate social context. And these are not occurring during the course of a psychotic episode. So I do think that as a whole, you're absolutely right, Jim, what you said before. This is a form of mental illness. They don't realize that they have gone down this path of psychopathy. And when you want to look at, delusional disorder here, delusions, we're talking about, I have to take my glasses off, sorry. We're talking about delusions are fixed beliefs that are not amenable to change in light of conflicting evidence. This is coming right from the DSM-5 book. So I say this is under the schizophrenia spectrum, honestly. It's right here in the book. See, right there, under schizophrenia, you have delusional. So I think that Trump derangement syndrome falls under, it's a comorbid diagnosis with schizophrenia and oppositional defiant disorder. And so I could continue on with this, but I'll save that for another report. But I just wanted to tell you, it comes right from the book. It's not from my opinion. It's just the thing about psychiatric diagnosis is that usually there's no blood test that you can take. It's all about observable behavior. And if you're really good, and I'm very good at this, and I did study, psychopathology in graduate school. And if you're really good at this, you'll be successful at diagnosing people. I don't know if you'll be successful at treating them, but certainly.
Louisa, the key to what you read is the following: having delusions that are not amenable to adjustment by the evidence.
Yeah.
Because there's so much evidence that Trump has been doing good things for the country, but the Democrats are oblivious.
Yeah.
And it's a failure of rationality. It's indispensable to the exercise of reason that with the acquisition of new evidence or alternative hypotheses, you're willing to adjust your beliefs to reject hypotheses you previously accepted, accept hypotheses you previously rejected, and leave others in suspense. The Democrats have demonstrated conclusively they're incapable of being rational when it comes to Donald Trump. They are suffering from a mass illusion, a mass delusion. They have so fixated in their mind that this is an evil man that all the evidence in the world could not change it.
Jim, comments from our live stream, live text chat viewers. We have here, Marisande says, so glad Jim is finally pissed at the Democrats. Marisande. We have Silver Dust saying, James Gilliland has always said 12 grandmothers need to be running the country. We have Silver Dust saying, we need you in office, Louisa. I don't know. I wouldn't go without Jim. Jim, if you want to run, we'll go together. Thanks for your comments, everybody. I really do appreciate everybody joining us and being with us.
We're on to a very real issue.
Exactly.
And did you catch this cartoon, Louisa? It's just so perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Because this whole impeachment thing has been a disaster for the Democrats.
Yes.
Now,
Political
get
theater,
this.
Jim.
Say again.
Political theater for sure.
Yeah. Iowa fiasco raises the stakes for New Hampshire, where Sanders could win big. Absolutely, it's going to happen. Monday night's collapse of the caucus vote counting process in Iowa has amped up the spotlight on and the political consequences of what will happen in New Hampshire. A clear Sanders victory would make him the front runner for the Democratic presidential nomination. In my opinion, he already has that status. After reeling off a few lowlights of the status quo for the last 45 years, wages have been stagnant for the middle class. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty. 45 million people still have student SES. How can 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America? Then he closed by saying, and here is the answer. Nothing will change unless we have the guts to take on Wall Street, the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the military industrial complex, and the fossil fuel industry. If we don't have the guts to take them on, we will continue to have plans, we'll continue to have talk, and the rich will get richer and everybody else will be struggling. He's nailing it right on, Louisa. Whether they agree with Bernie or not, people widely understand he absolutely means what he says. And that helps to explain why during the next seven days in national media and across New Hampshire, corporate forces will be in overdrive to prevent a Bernie Sanders victory in the New Hampshire primary. May I say, Bernie, during the debate last night, pointed out that Butigeig is supported by millionaires. He's now published a list of some 44 millionaires who are supporting Butigeig because they're worried that Bernie is going to upset their apple cart. It's not mere happenstance. The sound system at a Bernie rally often blasts out the song "Power to the People" as he takes the stage. The only power of people determined and mobilized can overcome the forces arrayed against Bernie Sanders' campaign and the movement supporting him at this pivotal historical moment. Meanwhile, the DNC is doing everything it can to stop Bernie. They're discussing rules change to stop him at the convention. A small group of DNC members has privately begun gauging support for a plan to potentially weaken Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign and head off a brokered convention. This would be by allowing those superdelegates to vote in the first round, which they took off of the table after Hillary basically stole the election with the help of the DNC. Now they want to reinstate it. Why? Because Sanders is surging, while Biden has maintained a lead nationally. At least 3 other candidates are seen as viable, raising the specter of a second vote at the convention, which will be held in Milwaukee. Meanwhile, Bernie supporter Michael Moore, who had a really wonderful interview last night, by the way, after the debate with Chris Hedges on MSNBC, it was really excellent. And so it begins. Billionaire Michael Bloomberg spent tens of millions in 2017 and 18 to help elect House Democrat candidates. Additionally, Bloomberg funds various political activist organizations for specific issues like gun restrictions. The DNC and Bloomberg are like peas and carrots. Remember now, the DNC and RNC are private clubs. This is literally the case. In court, Debbie Wasserman Schultz argued that the DNC was a private corporation and it did not have to be responsive to the caucuses and the primaries that were being conducted as political theater in order to make it look as though the Democratic Party were actually democratic. In my opinion, in the interests of honesty and advertising, they ought to rename themselves the Undemocratic Party. They can do anything they want, support anyone they want, disavow anyone they want. Nothing matters more to the club boardroom than dollars, and specifically how they can translate those dollars into power. A week ago, DNC President Tom Perez appointed Barney Frank to the Rules Committee. Frank then hired, God forbid, John Podesta. Yesterday, the Rules Committee changed the club rules, allowing billionaire Michael Bloomberg to join the debates this month. Michael Moore is going bananas about the transparently corrupt dealing with the DNC. I agree completely with Michael Moore about this. He says an utterly corrupt act. What they did was to abandon a requirement that a candidate had to have a large number of donors because Bloomberg is basically financing himself. He's many times over the billionaire that Trump is. His worth is only about $3 billion. Bloomberg's $55 billion. He's going all out to buy the campaign. That was another nice point made in the debate last night, even by Elizabeth Warren, that no one should be able to buy the presidency as Michael Bloomberg is attempting to do. Meanwhile, factually, I would argue Bernie has always led in the polls, but party operatives in alignment with the apparatus of the media have manipulated the media poll outcome in an effort to steer the chosen narrative from the DNC boardroom. It's just how they roll. This publication uses alternative matrices to gauge support, including monitoring social media and looking for the club's traditional AstroTurf fingerprints. That said, the dynamic within the factional Democratic Party is now quite remarkable. Despite the transparent hit jobs by DNC operatives against him, Bernie is in position to win nearly every early state and has a clear and viable path to the nomination. But the club has made some conspicuous counter moves. Here's Tulsi commenting. Representative Tulsi Gabbard just released a statement saying the DNC and party establishment are rigging the primary process for billionaire candidates. Thousands of people turned out to cast the first votes in this presidential primary in the Iowa caucuses last night, Gabbard said. Unfortunately, the voices of the people of Iowa have yet to be heard as the vote count continues, having voters frustrated without the transparency and integrity in the process they expect and deserve. The representative from Hawaii said it was clear to her the corporate media, the military industrial complex, and the party establishment are threatened by her message because it challenges their grip on power. The DNC and their cronies will do everything to silence us while also rigging the primary process for billionaire candidates who think they can bypass the kind of grassroots campaigning that is the fuel of our movement. May I say, I think that Tulsi would be a fantastic nominee to run with Bernie Sanders. I think a Sanders-Gabbard combo would be as powerful as the Democrats could feel. They may actually go with a Sanders-Butigeig combo, but I'm worried because of Buttigieg's youth and inexperience, even though he's very articulate, and how well it'll go down with the American people to have a first husband, even though we had that with Barack Obama and Michelle, but the people, the public, were oblivious and unaware of that being the case. Meanwhile, little Mikey Bloomberg nets 20 popular votes in Iowa after blowing through $200 million. Notice that's 10 million a vote, 10 million a vote. He could do a whole lot better if he just gave people a cup of coffee off the street to wander in and vote for him. I have thought he was 5'8". Trump did a devastating skewering of him, suggests he was negotiating with the DNC to stand on a lift or a platform during the debates to make himself appear taller. I'm told he's actually only 5'6". There's a photograph of Michelle Obama sitting beside Michael Bloomberg, and it's referred to as Big Mike because Michelle Obama was born Michael Robinson and little Mike, Michael Bloomberg, and Michelle is like twice the size of Michael Bloomberg. Well, here's the tab of the votes from the popular out of Iowa. Tom Steyer, who was very eloquent last night, I was very impressed, got 413 votes or 0.3%. Uncommitted got 1,418 or 0.2%. Other got 200 but 0%. Michael Bennett, 4 votes or 0.0%. Michael Bloomberg, 20.0%. Not a very auspicious beginning for little Mike, Louisa.
No, Jim. Nope. Let me see where'd you go? Yeah, I just, I'll tell you, this is my response I have to that. Let me just go here and play this for you. So I'm going to screen share a quick little video clip here for everybody. And So that's my comment to that one, Jim.
Well, yeah.
Just in case you need it.
That's very good, Louisa. Very good.
Just in case you need another one, here, I'll give you this one.
Folks. I'm doing this to make America great again. And again is a very important word. Very important word. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere.
We have surveyed all systems in the Republic.
Excuse me. I'm not going anywhere, folks. I'm doing this to make America great again. And again is a very important word. Very important word. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere.
We have surveyed all systems in the Republic.
Excuse me.
So there you have it, Jim. There you have it.
I love it. I love it, Louisa. It's great fun. And
there you have it. If you want to really get Teflon Don hits a knockout punch. Merry Acquitmas, folks. Get ready for Gitmas.
Well, I just think the Democrats have destroyed themselves. They have no credibility. It's very embarrassing. And actually, the news gets even worse for them, Louisa.
Yeah.
Get this.
Okay.
Joe Biden helped launch business for son-in-law from the Oval Office, repeatedly briefed investors privately. Former Vice President Joe Biden went to great lengths to boost his son-in-law's healthcare company while in the White House, briefing investors on the firm's merits and even arranging access to the Oval Office. The bombshell revelations are detailed in Profiles in Corruption, Abuse of Power by America's Progressive Elite, a new book by Peter Schweitzer, a senior contributor at Breitbart and the president of the Government Accountability Institute. In June 2011, Biden arranged a private meeting for two startup health executives with then President Barack Obama in the Oval Office. At the time of the meeting, the company had been around for only a few weeks. It had yet to finalize its business plan, let alone develop a website, and there was Biden pushing it. His efforts on behalf of the company expansively increased during his final years in office, both internationally and at home. First, the vice president took Crine with him on Air Force Two to a conference on regenerative health hosted by Pope Francis at the Vatican in April of 2016. Conference attendees included a who's who of scientific researchers in medicine from around the world, Schweitzer notes. Then in May, Crine was tasked with introducing his father-in-law at a major health industry data conference hosted by the Obama administration. The opportunity provided free publicity to the company as it planned to expand its portfolio. In October 2016, Biden appeared alongside Startup Health CEO at the Cleveland Clinic's Medical Innovation Summit. During his remarks, Biden praised Startup Health as an innovator in the healthcare market and claimed companies like it would be essential to winning the battle against cancer. Apart from arranging access and touting the public and the company in public, Biden also took steps in the waning days of the Obama administration to boost investment in startup health. In January 2017, Biden made one of his first appearances as vice president at a festival hosted by the company in San Francisco. At the event, Biden lauded Startup Health's success to 250 attendees, including members and prospective donors. Ironically, at the same time he was working to promote his son-in-law's business, Biden was also claiming his children had chosen careers unlikely to make them rich. I wish my kids would become wealthy, Biden told the International Association of Firefighters in July 2012, while lambasting the economic policies of then Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney. Profiles in Corruption outlines how Biden's children and other members of his family did just that while he was in political office. And here it gets even worse. Alexandra Bruce, Burisma whistleblower bombshell. You can find this archived on my blog at jamesfetzer.org. A high-level person currently at Burisma Holdings in Ukraine is in possession of many documents that expose how the company has been used to steal virtually all of the money coming to Ukraine from USAID, and how this money was diverted, laundered, and kicked back. The insider claims to have seen the names of everyone involved, including high-level business people and politicians from the UK, US, and other countries. Roughly 10 out of the 40 total are US Democrat politicians. John Mark Dugan, former Palm Beach County Deputy Sheriff and former publisher of police Department whistleblowing websites now living under political asylum in Moscow has recorded this interview with a Burisma whistleblower. He says he spent the past 2 months actively seeking to cultivate relationships with Burisma employees on the Russian social media website, and he succeeded in getting one of the executives to speak with him. He told Sarah Wessel, I came across one individual who doesn't like what's going on. This person's in a top level position, and we actually met. And this person brought stacks of documents, ledgers, all sorts of stuff for me to take a look at. And the information is very good. Information on people involved in Burisma, in the laundering of state money, and not just people in the United States and Ukraine, it's people all around the world, like Great Britain, for example, politicians and business people. Not only does it expose them, but it exposes their shell companies that they have in Panama and Cyprus and other places like that. The Bidens are a big piece of the information, but there's actually a lot of people involved in it. Generally speaking, it's just a bunch of top-level people around the world, not necessarily politicians, but there are a lot of politicians. The Bidens are very heavily involved. Now, I think Burisma might have laundered the total aid coming to Ukraine. So if that's the case, there's possibly a lot more companies in Ukraine doing this scheme. Dugin said he took this info to the FBI, but he never heard back from them. It's a gold mine of information, and it implicates top-level people in the United States. It implicates politicians. He said the FBI doesn't investigate the corruption of powerful people because they could become angered and cut the FBI's budget. So the FBI brass doesn't want this information to get out. A whistleblower can't disclose this information from within Ukraine, or their whole family will be assassinated. Dugin is trying to raise $10,000 to help him relocate to Russia. He says, if I can make this happen, the whistleblower will give me a treasure trove of documents I've already seen, names, dates, amounts, calendars, phone records. Please help me get the money to get this whistleblower to safety and get the evidence of the truth. Louisa, this is just devastating, but it's very similar to what we're finding here. You can count on the death list for the Clintons is growing. 9 of the 12 people who saw Anthony Weiner's laptop are now dead. There are a total of 12 persons who saw Anthony Weiner's laptop computer, which contained incriminating information on Hillary Clinton and other powerful individuals in the United States. 9 of those 12, including the NYPD officers, are now dead. Absolutely unbelievable. Par for the course for the Clintons and the DNC. And Louisa, just look at the stunning hypocrisy of the impeachment proceedings. Mm-hmm. If they wanted a real bona fide target of corruption, that would be Joe Biden, not Donald Trump.
Well, look, people are going to start learning a lot more about what's going on with the Ukraine. We're going to, let me just screen share what Q has said, the latest post by Q. These are, foreign actors have been bribing U.S. citizens in key positions to betray their country. Why is China and Qatar donating vast sums of money to our education, re-education? I'm thinking Bernie Sanders gulags. Okay. Education institutions. So this is a news story by Finance Yahoo about Harvard. And here we have justice.gov. University professor and 2 Chinese nationals charged 3 separate China-related charges. It's so hard to believe that actors are able to bribe those in key positions within the U.S. to betray our own country. It's really quite sad. Here it says Russia did not interfere with the U.S. election of 2016. And for everybody who says nothing's happening, just take a look at this. It says, regarding the FBI, all right, James Comey fired, Andrew McCabe fired, Jim Rubicki fired, James Baker fired, Bill Priestap fired, Peter Strzok fired, Lisa Page fired, Mike Corten fired, Josh Campbell fired. The list goes on, folks. We have Glacalone fired. We have Turgle fired, Bauer fired, Anderson fired. The things are happening. There was so much corruption going on. They tried to destroy the USA from within. This is no doubt the enemy within. People who worshipped money, the love of money, the love of power. This is really the story of humanity here, folks. Had sold out America for their own you know, personal gains. And it wasn't just, you know, politics as usual, folks. We're talking treason, sedition. We're talking, get ready to go to Gitmo, folks, because that's where we're headed. I'm going to screen share for you where this is all going to end up going very soon for everybody. Where's my window? Oh, can you see this, Jim?
Yes, I can see it.
It's beginning to look a lot like Gitmus. Can you see that?
No.
All right.
No.
Okay, I have to rescreen.
It was still the list.
Okay, here it is. This is where it's going. Get ready for tribunals, folks. Get ready to hear about these crimes and some things. And as you said, Jim, I did see a still image of the video from that Wiener laptop. And let me tell you, as I said last night in the POTUS report, these New York City police are the toughest men on the planet. The toughest men in our military, toughest men on the planet. When these New York City cops looked at what was on this video, they needed psychological counseling. They were so disturbed.
Tears. They were reduced to tears. It was so horrific.
They were so disturbed by what they saw, they couldn't even cope with it. And let me tell you something. In New York City, they've seen it all. They've seen everything, but they never saw anything like this. And I'm telling you, folks, I don't know that it'll ever be made public. I have seen stills from that. And I can tell you that I, you know, my history was working in facial prosthetics. So I did work with catastrophic burn cases and disfigurements and things like that. I was used to seeing things that were not normal. And when I looked at it, you know, I wasn't quite as disturbed because I did have that, but it is disturbing. It's kind of almost like a delayed reaction, you know, because it is so horrific. You can't even imagine that anybody would do that.
It's so terrible. I can't even describe it on the air because it will give you nightmares.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what I have here is a photo actually, which might be, let me just screen share. This is an image of a person who I had to make some prosthetics for. So just real quickly, I mean, this was a jealous boyfriend that sprayed acid on her and destroyed her appearance. She was a beauty queen in another country. And, you know, that was the picture. And, but, you know, it's amazing and horrific what, you know, the human condition, you know, folks, we lead ourselves to things like that. And, but ultimately there is going to be accountability. And of course, you know, of course, President Trump is here to do that. And I'm just going to screen share this little thing here to kind of illustrate that for everybody. So here you have it. Let me play that again. Here's President Trump coming to America's rescue.
President of the United States.
I am so sorry to my world. I'm so sorry to my world.
So that's kind of the reality of it. You know, here you have President Trump trying to bring, you know, the golden age to humanity, to even the whole earth, to be honest with you, because when the changes start here, they trickle globally. And that's why these trade deals are good. They're reciprocal trade deals and they're good for everybody. So it affects everybody on a global level. And then you have the Trump derangement people who can't cope. So you just have to help your brothers and sisters, folks, get through it somehow. But when it all comes out in the wash and this stuff is going to be exposed, it's going to be very difficult for people, especially what's on that laptop there, Jim.
I agree. Meanwhile, and this is a horrific story all by itself, Virginia House Committee advances bill to ban assault firearms, a bill that would ban citizens from owning or selling an assault firearm passed a Virginia House Committee on February 7th as a raft of other gun control proposals moved through the Democrat-controlled state legislature. Meanwhile, gun sales in the state have soared in the past few months. Here's another story about it. Richmond, Virginia, bill banning assault weapons is passed through the House of Delegates Committee on Public Safety with a vote of 12-9. HB 961 would ban the sale of certain semi-automatic firearms, including popular AR-15 style rifles. But the bill would not require current owners of assault weapons to turn them in or register them with state police, as some earlier proposals required. The bill also prohibits a person from carrying a shotgun with a magazine that will hold more than 7 rounds of the longest ammunition for which it is chambered in a public place. Under existing law, this prohibition only applies in certain localities. Here's a third report about it. Assault weapons ban advances in Virginia legislature amid fierce opposition. A Virginia State House committee on Friday passed a bill that would ban the sale of certain semi-automatic firearms, including the popular AR-15 style rifles. HB 961 would also ban silencers and magazines that hold more than 12 rounds. It was passed out of the House Public Safety Committee by a vote of 12-9. The bill, which has the support of Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, will now make its way to the floor of the state's Democrat-controlled House of Delegates. Pro-gun residents of the state packed the committee room for the vote. And when the measure passed, the crowd erupted into protest. An ABC affiliate reported people became so agitated that law enforcement was forced to disperse the crowd. Law enforcement are asking rowdy crowd to leave. People are yelling at cops, asking whose side they are on. After the vote passed, National Rifle Association spokeswoman Catherine Mortensen described the bill as an egregious gun ban that will make millions of law-abiding Virginians felons overnight. Earlier this year, the Virginia House passed 7 other Democratic gun reform laws. The bills include regulations implementing universal background checks and red flag legislation, allowing officials to take guns from those determined to be dangerous to themselves or others. Now, what I say about this, Louisa, is we have Virginia being an overwhelmingly rural state. We have nearly 90 counties and cities in Virginia that are Second Amendment sanctuary, and for good reason. What the Democrats discount, and this is part of their delusion, is that weapons are used for defensive purposes between 500,000 and 3 million times every single year. We're estimated to save 200,000 American citizens' lives every single year. Where residents of these farmhouses, which are typically remote, know that if they don't have weapons to defend themselves, they'll be at the mercy of roving urban gangs who are out to rape and kill and pillage. This is an insane move by the governor of the state, who was one of the 14 states that were bought up by Michael Bloomberg using his vast wealth in order to get anti-gun zealots elected to the state legislatures. This is not playing out well. This is not going to go down without resistance, and it may lead to precipitating a real civil war again in the United States, right in Virginia, as I've observed again and again. When they come for our guns, the time has come to use them.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you so much for that. You're absolutely right, folks. We cannot allow them to infringe upon our Second Amendment. And you know that the president is committed to protecting the Second Amendment. He has said this repeatedly in almost every opportunity he's had to voice this. The state level, there's certain things that are out of his reach in terms of the state level, but the state cannot violate our Constitution, because then it is unconstitutional. And people have to start realizing that this is the agenda of the Democrats, and you have to take some action. You have to really stand up now. It's time we the peeps have to stand up and take this country back, because we almost lost it, folks. We almost lost it. Jim?
I have only one final story for you.
Sure.
Only one actual slide, but it's very, very troubling.
It is troubling.
Yeah. I received a phone call from a woman in Utah who knows what she's talking about, that she's uncovered a plot to have Wolfgang Halbig involuntarily committed to a mental facility when he arrives in court to respond to his latest completely unwarranted arrest. They rousted him out in the middle of the night. They handcuffed him very harshly, marched him through a cow pasture to the police car so he'd look disheveled for his mugshot, so they could claim he'd been arrested for a felony when it was only a misdemeanor. It had to do with the possession of personal information about this man, Leonard Posner, who's the face of Sandy Hook, who's a cyber terrorist, in my opinion. He has boasted of taking down 1,555 YouTubes, being responsible for the removal of tens of thousands of content items from the internet, He's hassling Wolfgang because Wolfgang has been adamant and diligent about exposing Sandy Hook, and they're trying to do everything they can to trash in public. Every one of us is doing our best to expose what's going on to the American people. If anyone is disposed to support Wolfgang, as am I, you may, at your discretion, send a check or money order made out to Sandy Hook Justice to his address at 25526 Hawks Run Road, Sorrento, Florida, 32776. He even answers the phone. His number 352-729-2559. I traveled to Newtown with Wolfgang Halbach in 2014, where we spoke to the Newtown school board, and where I asked, because the condition of the school was so deplorable, when were their parents notified that their children were attending school in a toxic waste dump? Wolfgang's been particularly diligent about exposing the fact that the school was in an impossible, dilapidated condition, that there could have been no students there, confirming my discovery that it was in violation of the Americans with Disability Act requirements by having no blue and white sign, no blue and white parking lots for handicapped. It could not have been legally operating in 2012, which I verified at the time with both state and federal law. This is a very good man. He's a former Florida state trooper, a former U.S. Customs agent, a former school principal, and a nationally recognized school safety expert who only sought to learn what happened at Sandy Hook so he could warn other school systems what to do to ensure it didn't happen to them. This is a disgrace. These perps are abusing the law to punish people who are speaking out. This is a classic example of a slap suit, as was the case for me, of a strategic legislation to defeat public participation, to punish those of us who speak out, and to set an example for others that if they follow what we're doing in seeking to get out the truth about these staged events, they'll suffer a similar indignity, be dragged into court, and it'll last a very long time. I entreat everyone out there, if you're at all able to do so, support Wolfgang Halbach. He's been most diligent and has even discovered now massive evidence that they were, because Sandy Hook Elementary was in fact closed, they were administratively carrying the name Sandy Hook on records when they were actually using Chalk Hill Elementary in Monroe, Connecticut, a good distance away, for the students who might otherwise have been at Sandy Hook. And Wolfgang is making path-breaking discoveries, and they're punishing him for it. I encourage you, if you possibly can, and you'll find this tweet on my Twitter account, @Jim Fetzer, where I publish all my latest findings about the most important events we're dealing with today.
Thank you for that, Jim. Excellent reporting this week, my friend. Excellent, excellent. There's always they always provide so much political theater for us to talk about, don't they?
It's shameful, Louisa, but we're in a dark age, an Orwellian era of doublespeak, where telling the truth is a revolutionary act.
Marisande, thank you. She says, right on, Jim. Thank you. Everybody, they will confiscate his mail. They're concerned about that, making comments about that. When the lights go on, 2020 portfolio says, when the lights come on, cockroaches run. Yep. And Nancy Martin says, oh, it's going public. If I have to bang on the White House door, things the deep state has done to children is unmanageable.
If you share that tweet, just go to Jim Fetzer. Just share that tweet to let the public know how bad it has got here for those of us who are trying to expose the hoax known as Sandy Hook.
Well, it's time's up, folks. We're almost about 2 hours now, and but it's nice that it does take a little bit longer when we're interacting live chat with our viewers. So thank you so much. Have a happy weekend, folks. Happy February 8th today. Jim, thank you for awesome reporting. This is in lieu of Monday, folks. We're not going to be here on Monday because I will be out of town. So this is so our political theater is being published today, Saturday, February 8th, and we might do something, quick follow-up next week, just to pick up anything that happens over the weekend. But we will be back next week, Jim, with another political theater, my friend. Thank you so much.
And let me add my compliments to the chat room. We welcome your participation. I'm delighted.
Yeah, this is a freedom of speech platform here. We welcome your comments as long as they're respectful or not hateful. And definitely, you know, you're allowed to express your opinion here. Absolutely, Jim. Thank you so much. Jim and I are also color coordinated today. See, we resonate on the truth frequency. And when you resonate on the truth frequency, you're all, you know, you all vibe together. So we're all vibing together. So have a great weekend, everyone. Jim, thank you so much. See you next week, my friend.
See you then.
And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks so much. And give this video a thumbs up, please. Thanks.